I just want to test you can all hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Well, look, first of all, thank you very much for joining today. We are delighted to be able to commence our first webinar with our friends at Crypto UK. We are very excited to be able to host a wonderful group of interested members, firms, and colleagues. I'm David Bryden. I'll just introduce myself. I am the country head of JO1 UK Partners. We are based in London. I'm also the country head covering the UK Crown Dependencies and Ireland. We are a governance, risk, and compliance consulting business with a very strong technology capability. We have offices across the GCC, in Canada. We are opening offices in Singapore. And so we've got very good, very significant footprint. The business has been running for over a decade, and many of you will have worked out already that Jahanzeb Awan is the CEO and founder, and also today will be speaking in his capacity as chairman of MEACBA, which is the Middle Eastern Asia Crypto and Blockchain Association, Asia and Africa Crypto and Blockchain Association. And we're also very happy to have Ian Taylor with us as well from Crypto UK, and very excited to be able to host this. I will pass over for brief introductions to Jahanzeb and Ian, and I will moderate today. So once we've wrapped up those introductions in just a minute, we will crack on, and I'll give the format of the seminar and ground rules for the webinar. So Jahanzeb, if I could pass over to you.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate it. And thanks for everybody who's joined us. As David said, my name is Jahanzeb Awan. I'm the founder and CEO of JO1 Partners, and also the chairman of the Crypto and Blockchain Association for Middle East, Asia, and Africa. In that capacity, I just want to share with you that our remit is to purely educate all stakeholders, including the firms that are in the crypto business, the regulators, and obviously the users that are there. So the key focus is education, coordination, and supporting innovation. That's the main purpose of the association. And we've obviously had signed a memorandum of understanding with Crypto UK to further that initiative. And we'll be looking to hopefully having an interesting discussion that raises some questions in your mind, and please do ask questions that you have. Hopefully we can answer those, and whatever we cannot, we will definitely try to come back and answer those separately. Over to you, Ian. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, David, and thank you so much to JO1 Partners for inviting Crypto UK to speak today. So I'm Ian Taylor. I'm a board advisor at Crypto UK. Crypto UK is a trade association. I'm sure most folks on the call know what the purpose of a trade association is. Our main job is to advocate for balanced and proportionate regulation. We have 150 members. We were founded in 2017. I took over the helm at the end of 2019. And as many folks will know, in the UK, we have some actual regulatory clarity at long last, which is great. Thank you to our government for listening to us. It's not perfect, but regulation never is. So it's our job to make sure that we iron out some of the creases. And just to sort of finish my intro on, if I had a pound or a dirham for every time somebody said that Dubai is killing it when it comes to crypto policy and regulation, I could retire. So I'd be really interested in this discussion to learn what the jurisdiction is doing, what it's getting right, and share some of the insights of Crypto UK and how we're open to collaborate with any jurisdiction, any trade association, and any entity, just to ensure that the technology gets the right level of protections across the piece is really important because, as we know, the technology knows no boundaries, geographical limitations. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ian. And so let me just frame where we're going and what we'll do today. I guess big thanks first of all to Crypto UK, to EMEA, and thank you very much for everyone to join us. What we wanted to do was we wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at jurisdictions outside of the UK and the EU. And this has been largely driven from what we've seen in client demand, where we've been having conversations with clients in the UK and across Europe who have been saying, we know that there are lots of other jurisdictions we could be looking at. What should we be thinking of? Where is a place where there is a high degree of regulatory certainty? Where is there a place where it's where there is an open door policy, where firms will be welcome, and where is there a place where there is also a good quality of living for staff who are considering moving or migrating. And these are perhaps slightly softer factors, but things like schools, hospitals, accessibility to comfortable accommodation, personal security, that sort of thing have been legitimate questions for us. So we wanted to broaden out some of these discussions. We also know that there have been challenges in regulation around crypto and digital assets more widely, and that the UK is currently in a space where it is trying to catch up, I think, having come to the realization that the regulatory framework and the uncertainty between various bodies across, between regulators, between government departments, has caused some confusion. And so we wanted to do a little bit of compare and contrast. We wanted to bring some knowledge and information to participants. And as Jahanzeb said earlier on, by all means, if you do have questions, just post them through the chat, and we are very happy to pick them up as we go. And if we can't pick all of them up afterwards, we're very happy to engage either bilaterally or through Crypto UK to further the discussion. So let's see. Let's crack on with a little bit of background. So if we look at not only the UK, but we look at some of the wider jurisdictions, everyone will be aware of MiCA, that is in the process of coming in, a huge amount of work that's been done across the EU. And despite that, there appears to be a fair amount of fragmentation still in some of the approach, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, and depending on the type of asset class. And if we look at Africa more widely, we've got a wide range of approaches that are going on in Africa. So South Africa has decided to embrace crypto as much more akin to a financial instrument, so almost the sort of thing that we would place in the MiFID bucket, and has placed a registration requirement that is in full takeoff mode at the moment. And so those firms have been, crypto firms have been, I think, acknowledged as being more welcome, but again, a very different approach than the UK has taken or has considered taking, if you consider the TSC's guidance on treating crypto as gambling rather than more akin to a financial instrument. You've got other jurisdictions in Africa being coming along. So I would say that, for example, Egypt has recently apparently loosened its stamp, or looks like it's loosening its stamp on accepting crypto. And you've then got other countries on the far end of the spectrum. So the Central African Republic has declared Bitcoin legal tender, is launching its own crypto token, and is very keen to totally embrace it. And so we've got the CAR on one side, and then we've got Nigeria, very possibly obviously the largest country from a population perspective in Africa, and a very, very wealthy one, being very, very tough and taking a very tough stance on crypto, in particular with the country's ability, or the country's banks, to be able to handle transactions in crypto, either as an on-ramp or an off-ramp for those sorts of assets. So we've got a very, very wide range. In the UAE, we've seen a very different approach and a very high degree of regulatory certainty. And what I might do is I might just ask Jahanzeb to speak a little bit to that, and not Jahanzeb, if you wouldn't mind picking up not only on crypto, but also on virtual assets more widely. I think that may very well be of interest to some of the participants in the webinar.
Thank you, David. I think one thing I definitely want to mention is please do ask questions. This is more of a discussion as opposed to us simply speaking at you. So the question around the UAE or the GCC, and I'll include Saudi as well in it, because when you talk about the GCC, the two main countries that come to mind are the UAE and Saudi Arabia. UAE is quite a unique animal in terms of its regulatory framework. For those of you who do not know the landscape, it's a country of about 10.5 million and has 4 different financial services regulators. So you have 2 financial free zones. One is in Dubai, which is the Dubai International Financial Center, which is probably the best known financial center in the region. Then you have the Abu Dhabi Global Market, which is the financial free zone of Abu Dhabi. You have the central bank, which is an equivalent of the PRA or the Bank of England. And then you have a Securities and Commodities Authority, which is a capital markets regulator outside of the free zones. And recently, Dubai government started a new virtual assets regulator, the Dubai Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority, which is specifically aimed at regulating virtual assets, particularly crypto businesses. So the questions that we get most of the times is, where do we go? Who do we need to get regulated by? What is the implications of if you do one versus the other, or do we have to go to all of the regulators, etc.? But before I get into that, I think one important thing to mention is, since 2018, particularly, the Abu Dhabi global market has been at the forefront of crypto regulations. So in 2019, they came out with the full set of regulations. And what they have done is they've overlaid the virtual assets regulation on top of the existing capital markets regulations that they have, which serve well. I think they initially, as any regulator would take, took a very conservative view on how they wanted business to be done, which resulted in firms taking a lot longer to get approved, etc. But there was a reasonable framework in place to derive regulatory certainty from. That they have worked on quite a lot over the years, and they have issued lots of guidance papers and guidance notes and updated the regulations. So initially what we saw was firms looking to go to ADGM from most of the places that those firms that were looking for either regulatory certainty. In the beginning, there was also lots of startup businesses whose fundraising was subject to getting a regulatory approval, who were also coming to the ADGM, because that was potentially the only proper regulator that investors would consider putting money into. As things have evolved, particularly post-COVID, and how the UAE has handled COVID, there was a lot of interest from a lot of crypto virtual assets firms and people involved and stakeholders involved across the globe to look at opening up their businesses in the UAE to cover global outreach and so on. So when that happened, the Dubai government obviously has a lot of foresight. They want to make sure that they, from a regulatory point of view, make it easier for people to move to Dubai, as opposed to the wider region. And then they created the Dubai Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. Now, the rules are reasonably robust, I would say, for both the ADGM and under the Dubai Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. We call it the VARA. And you can reasonably set up and operate from the UAE. You have to consider cross-border implications, etc. But that is a much better setup compared to what's happening, particularly in the UK, and even with MiCA. I think there's some precedence in terms of what the regulatory outcome would look like if you follow the process that has been articulated. Quickly moving on to Saudi Arabia. Saudi currently does not have crypto regulations, although they have a private consultation from the capital markets regulator in the works. And it is expected that this year we will see some crypto regulations come into force. The nature of those regulations are not known at this point, although we have seen the consultation. And sometimes what does happen is that the consultation and the end result are significantly different. So we shy away from predicting how the end product is going to look like. The central bank in Saudi Arabia, SAMA, is also sort of looking at crypto, although they are a bit more conservative than the capital markets regulator. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a background of the two markets. I think, as all of you probably already know, most of the times people would want to move to the UAE, particularly to Dubai, and they want to move their businesses here. And Dubai is and Abu Dhabi, both of them are now very easy places to do business, easy places to set up shop, easy places to move your family to, because the infrastructure is fantastic, and life becomes quite interesting for people who are looking to get up and running or expand their business from. So I'll stop here. David, anything else you want me to answer?
That's very good. I think one of the questions that we have periodically been asked, in particular from businesses that have come out of either the UK or the EU, was the regulation seems to be very new, very well drafted. It seems very familiar in terms of tone and language. But your observations on, I think, engaging with a number of different regulators would probably be of interest to people in either compliance or in operations or in senior management roles. So perhaps you could just speak to how you negotiate those multiple regulators regulating virtual assets.
Thank you, David. Excellent question. I think the key thing to remember is that ADGM has had a lot of interest and has some history behind them now in terms of dealing with different types of businesses. So when you have conversations with the Abu Dhabi Global Markets Regulator, which is the FSRA, the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, you can have a robust discussion because they understand technology, they understand the concepts. You can talk about innovative business models. And they would give you generally a very good view on what they think potentially and the direction that they would be inclined to move towards. They're also very open to feedback. So that has been very good. Sometimes the discussions and policy views take a bit longer to implement, considering some of the risks and issues. Obviously, FTX did not help anyone, and that kind of posed a lot of questions to a lot of regulators. The Dubai Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority is very, very new. They are going to process probably the applications and support firms maybe a bit faster. However, that is yet to be seen, and we have a very close relationship with them as the association in terms of understanding what they're thinking and so on. So between those two, I think ADGM would have more historical background to use when dealing with what has happened, what works, what doesn't work. VARA definitely will be more interested and open to even more innovative business models. One thing I definitely want to mention is there are times when firms want to commingle a traditional business with a virtual assets business. And when that happens, then VARA is almost always out of the picture, simply because they only regulate virtual assets. So if you are running a securities business or potentially want to run a security business and also have a layer of virtual assets business, then the discussions need to be slightly different than just purely virtual assets related. So hopefully that answers the question.
Understood. Thank you very much. Ian, if I might bring you in a little bit, I think that from an economic development perspective, you can quite clearly see that the UAE has been very proactive in thinking what advantages it can seek to leverage by having a really dynamic and forward-looking regulatory framework. As a former regulator, I don't want to throw any of my old colleagues under a bus, but one of the things that the UK has that I think is a particular strength has been common law and a legal system which is renowned. And for example, I know that the ADGM has hired several very, very senior UK and Channel Islands judges to form part of its to give legal certainty within the ADGM. I'm just wondering, Ian, if you might be able to comment on that space that exists between regulation and law, and what insights, what you're hearing from members and questions that you're getting. And if that's an impossible question, I apologize in advance.
There's no impossible question. This is crypto. You can ask us anything. Firstly, just to sort of call out the excellent work that the regulator's done in the UAE to create a bespoke regulatory agency, VARA, to focus on this new sector. Staffed, I know some personally that have been brought in with experts and professionals that understand the technology, is a very, in my view, unique and good idea. That's not happened in the UK or in Europe or in the US. And in fact, it's something that we advocate for quite strongly, for the UK government to put in, to create a position for a crypto czar, for example, that could bring together all the different regulatory agents and has a lot of understanding and knowledge and experience. And so to the question, common law is obviously one of the fundamental reasons that the City of London, as a financial destination and a financial centre, it is so successful over the last few hundred years. And it's something that I hear time and time again when I talk to colleagues in the legal profession. And in fact, when I was interviewing the Minister for the City last week, he spoke about the common law as an attractive reason to come and set up, because it's so flexible in terms of the way that you write law into, or law becomes regulation. So focusing on my expertise, to set the scene, the UK at the moment has a handful of regulations in place for the crypto asset service provider, one being money laundering, which was prior to the UK leaving Europe. This was the EU AMLD5 anti-money laundering regime, and the FCA has been running that for a few years now, and there's some 40 plus companies that have been added to that registration, and hopefully we'll see a cohort of a handful of additional names added to that. And then financial promotions will be regulated, or promoting of crypto asset services will be regulated like financial promotions. That's a read across. And then new piece of regulation for stablecoin issuers will come into force at some point this year or next year, which is in the Financial Market Service Bill. So these are all pretty understood and well-known pieces of regulation that it currently exists. What we have recently seen is the government has consulted on an overarching set of requirements for conducting certain activities in crypto assets, whether it be running a trading venue, whether it be custodying, whether it be acting as an intermediary, broker, market abuse, and even DeFi was mentioned in this consultation. Now, this consultation closed the end of April. The government is still going through the responses. As I understand it, they received a fair amount of feedback from the community. Now, the proposed approach is a phased approach and looks at using some of the existing financial framework that we have and some bespoke regulation. The government absolutely does not want to regulate the sector as gambling, as suggested by the Treasury Select Committee. And just for clarity, I'm sure many folks understand this. These committees in UK government and in our democracy don't have any official power. So the government came out and sent Crypto UK a note, the government being Treasury, that have the power to write new policy and new regulation, said this is absolutely not the position of the government. This is a separate committee. What the government is required to do is respond to that inquiry findings, which they will do in due course, but this doesn't change anything. We will continue down the proposed route to regulate some of the activities like financial services, and then some of them bespoke. And the UK government hasn't said that unbacked crypto assets such as Bitcoin will be regulated like financial products at this time, which is kind of different to what we see in the US, and we can dive into that jurisdiction later during the conversation. But our members, to close the circle to answer the question, our members broadly agree with the suggested direction of travel by the UK government. Obviously, it's not perfect, as I said at the top of the call, no regulation is, it's a blunt instrument. However, we as the industry and the trade association representing crypto asset sector have been asking for clarity. Clarity is needed for many reasons, such as you can't build a product roadmap if you don't know what's down the road for existential threats to, say, banning the ability to trade crypto, which has happened in some jurisdictions. And so we welcome that. And the common law approach is, as I said, is obviously a very good aspect of doing business in the UK. And the UK obviously is an attractive place to set up. But I was just thinking actually regarding the good infrastructure that's been built in the UAE, and our infrastructure in the UK seems to be going the wrong way, but hopefully we'll get some additional funding out of government to improve that over the foreseeable future.
Great, Ian. That's great, and that's provided a very neat segue for me. So I think, Janzib, we spoke briefly about the UAE taking quite a visionary approach in terms of how it was going to regulate crypto and digital assets more widely. Could you maybe just broaden out what you've seen and some of your thoughts in terms of the wider infrastructure, as Ian has just mentioned, and providing, I think, an enabling environment, and what you're seeing on the ground in not only the UAE but perhaps more widely across the GCC?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, David. Great question. So I think the elephant in the room whenever you talk crypto is the on-ramping and off-ramping part of it, which relates to the bank account. So that problem remains mainly due to correspondent banking issues than more to do with money laundering issues. I think this is unfortunately where we are. However, we've had significant discussions as the association with many regulators, both in the UAE and Saudi and others, where significant efforts are being made to normalize or regularize the situation where crypto firms should be able to open bank accounts with, I won't say with as much ease as a normal bank account, but significantly easier than what it is currently experienced by crypto firms, which will be quite a significant step forward. You obviously can't do business if you can't take in money, and they are in an interesting way. There are now business models that some of our member firms are coming up with, which completely eliminate the fiat element to some degree, which is capturing the already existing crypto ecosystem or the virtual assets ecosystem. They are so in terms of the infrastructure now, you have quite a lot of different players in the UAE supporting a firm. So if you're an exchange and you need a custody provider, there are different custody providers that will support you. If you're a broker, you need custody solutions, people are there. If you need development of some sort, there are definitely people available. And again, crypto is a global phenomenon, not a country-specific or a regional phenomenon. So the ability to do business cross-border, be it from an infrastructure standpoint or from a commercial standpoint, is quite wide ranging. But in terms of enabling infrastructure, the regulatory framework is more robust, I would say, than any other place that we have seen so far. In terms of both implementation, there is action taken, so there is some certainty in terms of if I do X, what my outcome is going to be. So you pretty much get to close to Y, if you not get to Y in the wider UAE, and within the ADGM, you're likely to get to a more reasonable answer. So that's one. Two, obviously, the banking part I've already discussed. Three, the technological infrastructure to support firms to come to the UAE, particularly, is fantastic. It's a tier one setup. Saudi Arabia is coming up the curve, but I would say probably a couple of years behind in that respect. And then in terms of talent, which is again is a huge thing, right? So one of the biggest things that Dubai in particular, and now Abu Dhabi in general is also doing, is trying to attract a lot of global talent. And what you would have seen is the change in a lot of immigration and visa policy. So now you have visas available for people who are freelancers who can come and live in the UAE and utilize the freelancing visa. People can set up companies and sponsor employees. You also have now a golden visa scheme, which allows people to sponsor themselves, which means you're no longer dependent on an employer. Previously, 5 years ago, for example, if you lose your job with an employer, you have 30 days to find another job, similar to how it is in the US. If you're on a H-1B visa, if you lose your job, you have to either exit the country or find other employment within a certain period. So that has been changed, which also has resulted in a significant amount of interest from virtual assets developers, virtual asset firms, stakeholders in looking at the UAE as a destination of choice. So from that point of view, that's very, very important. And then from a social and personal standpoint, the schooling system, the education system, the hospitals, the entertainment, and just the government support and connectivity is also fantastic. So you put all of these things together, along with the response to COVID, which was better than most. You've had a lot of influx of people who either suffered from a significantly strict COVID setup, namely Hong Kong and Singapore, definitely, and some of the other European places, and then also a tax position that people are taking, particularly in the Western world, where they're thinking, okay, well, the taxes are only going to go up, and can I, considering virtual assets being a global business, can I place myself in a more tax-friendly jurisdiction? So from an infrastructure point of view, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I think many UK businesses historically would have looked towards the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man, for example, to branch out into those lower tax, offshore focused jurisdictions. But I really think that that the UAE in particular, and I would also say Saudi, are working very hard to try and catch up with those jurisdictions, and have seen it as a real not a project, but as a really critical point of economic development with a real robust plan behind it. So absolutely. Let's see. I'm just wondering. We've got a question from one of our participants. So if I just read that out so everyone can hear, does anyone know if the UAE will allow crypto ATMs? I've checked with DWTC and DMCC, but no one knows. They say ask the government, but don't give any contact details. So if there's any insight you could provide on that, that would I think that would scratch an itch that Stuart very definitely appears to have.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Stuart. Unfortunately, I don't have a specific answer, but I can give you the background that hopefully puts things into perspective. So the ATMs are generally within the domain of a bank, and they are not unable to basically do anything with cryptos currently for various reasons. Number one, the central bank's regulations don't really account for crypto except for the payments regulations in the stored value facility type business, where the regulations define money's worth and include crypto within it. So, however, if you go to the central bank and ask them to give you a license that allow you to receive payments in crypto, you're unlikely to get a nod currently from them. And this is the specific discussion that is happening currently between VARA, which is the Dubai regulator, and the UAE Central Bank, because I'm sure you would know that the payments business is covered under the VARA regulations. So when would it come? It is a function of whenever the payments regulations are implemented, including the stored value facility, and if banks are allowed to then basically fall within within those regulations, so then they can enable their ATMs to discharge or deal with crypto. Hopefully that answers the question.
That's great, and I'm sure that we'll hear on the chat if there are any further questions or if there's any further elaboration required. I'm just wondering, I'd like to have a small change of tack, just briefly, and pick up on ESG as a theme, because I know it's we've got regulation coming in. Ian's alluded to previously to the financial promotions landscape around crypto, but there's also a similar one around climate-related disclosures that the UK is currently reviewing. UK Treasury is currently reviewing, and the FCA are currently reviewing consultation on. And there's obviously some implemented legislation that's coming in the EU, in particular around investment products and funds. I think it's fair to say that it's been recognized that miners can have a very high carbon footprint. And I'm just wondering if there are any approaches that are emerging in what, I guess, as somebody from Western Canada and who was his family is heavily involved in the oil patch, a fairly carbon intensive jurisdiction, but also one that has immense amounts of renewables in terms of both solar and wind. And I would also say for our members or for the participants today in the UK, if you look out your window, you'll see it's both sunny and windy, and we're generating 49% of our electricity from renewables today, which is a bit of a come up. But what is, I guess the question is, what is there that miners with a reasonably high historical carbon footprint might be able to do in the region about making their businesses less carbon intensive?
Should I pick that up first, David? Sure. Yeah. Well, when you speak to government in what we do in advocacy, it's a question that comes up quite a lot that we don't shy away from. You can imagine if a politician doesn't know much about blockchain and doesn't understand the value proposition that Bitcoin provides, then they'll ask the question, why does this thing that adds no value burn the same amount of energy output in a year as a small country such as Switzerland? And that's the question that we hear a lot. And so the answer we'll give is, firstly, there is a value proposition behind Bitcoin and other crypto assets. It's X, Y, and Z. And in fact, what we've seen is post the banning of mining and other crypto services in China a couple of years ago, the majority of the hashing rate, which is the measure of where the blocks are being produced or mined, have moved out of that region, which, let's say, wasn't as focused on using renewable energy sources to mine Bitcoin, into regions in North America and Scandinavia, where there is more of a focus on using renewables for mining. Now, there are some indexes out there. I'd point the listeners, if they're interested, to the Cambridge University's Business School. It's a Centre for Alternative Investment. They have an index that drills down both for Bitcoin and Ether now, but originally it was set up for Bitcoin a few years ago, that shows the amount of energy produced, where it's being produced, and the energy mix, renewables versus non-renewables. So that's a really good tool. And a good thing, the thing about blockchain that we always forget is, because it's transparent and trustless, we know to exactly how many 8 decimal places, which is what Bitcoin could split into, but the accuracy of the amount of energy that the network uses. You can't say that about another industry, can you? Financial services, how much, what's the carbon footprint of the banking sector? I don't know. It's pretty hard to quantify that. And then also, because of the investment that's gone into mining Bitcoin, whether it be the chips, the ASIC chips, or it be investment into finding cheaper ways to produce energy using renewables, this investment has added to the improvement and ability to be more energy efficient and not burn so much energy. And then we were talking about ahead of the call, and obviously everyone knows the merge that took place. Ethereum last year moved its consensus mechanism off of proof of work, which is energy intensive, onto proof of stake, which uses hardly any energy at all, because the consensus is all based on you putting assets into the protocol rather than trying to solve the mathematical, hashing algorithm to be the next block producer. So all that being said, there's a lot more work that the industry can do, but the industry is quite focused on this. And as I said, renewable usage is quite high. And I'll just finish off by saying I spoke to a project a short time ago where the chap came from energy. I think he worked for one of the big French energy producers and had moved into building mining rigs next to hydro power plants in developing countries, for example, in Central and South America, that had built a power plant using hydro, but they hadn't built the infrastructure to pipe the electricity through the grid into houses yet. So they were actually generating electricity with nothing to do with it. And as we know, it's not easy to store energy in batteries, but again, battery technology is developing, so that's a good thing for the overall industry. And was carbon negative insofar as using renewables of energy that wasn't doing anything and giving back some of the proceeds from the mining to the local community to build schools, roads, and improve its infrastructure. So I thought that was a really unique proposition that this particular miner was doing. So yeah, it's interesting.
Fantastic, that's great. And Jahan's, any insights from the GCC or from any African countries that you could speak to?
Yeah, look, the UAE and Saudi Arabia particularly, and parts of Africa that are very heavy on Nigeria in particular on fossil fuels. There's a lot of pressure on the carbon footprint and reducing the carbon footprint flow. Anything that they can do to attract or convert the carbon footprint and reduce that, they're doing that, particularly with COP28 happening in Dubai, in the UAE this year. You will see a lot of announcements being made on what the country as a whole, in terms of actions that it will take to reduce its carbon footprint, which obviously will have an impact on the miners. There have been many interesting discussions in the UAE, some around using nuclear power, and again putting in mining stations around next to the UAE's nuclear power plant, etc., to use excess energy, etc. Something around the solar parks also in Dubai. There's a very large solar park in Dubai that is currently functioning, etc. So those discussions are happening. At the end of the day, I think as Ian mentioned, move away from proof of work to proof of stake is going to help reduce the impact of the carbon footprint from the industry. And most of the new blockchains that are coming in are using the proof of stake as opposed to proof of work, right? So the growth in the industry is likely to have the same growth in carbon footprint as it used to before. So that would be my view. And I think there's a question from Stuart again in terms of he was asking a question around ATMs, not banks. So Stuart, apologies if I didn't clarify. What I'm saying is because in the UAE, typically ATMs are approved by the central bank to be used by banks or some other financial services firms, and they require the central bank approval. In order for the ATMs to be allowed, you would need to get the central bank approval as an entity. And in order for you to get that approval, most likely the central bank has to be willing and ready to allow the implementation of their current regulations in the form of stored value facility that currently account for crypto as money's worth, which is what they're trying to regulate from in the payments and stored value facility business. So hopefully that answers the question, because it will be very difficult to do this without the underlying infrastructure in place. Okay. And the central bank's willingness to basically allow for that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jadzib. We've got another question, which is: are you able to talk to the licensing requirements where an FCA authorized UK financial services firm wants to speak to potential clients, professional eligible counterparties, not retail, in the UAE, specifically to have a discussion around participation on MTF, dealing in futures and options with digital assets as the underlying? This is almost a dream question for a MiFID nerd like me, but I will pass it on to you, and then for a little follow-up from Ian. Off you go.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much. Good question. Well, there is a very strict regulatory and legal answer to this, and there's what is the actual practice answer. So I'll try to give you both. And then there's a third answer, which is a combination of the two, where does the answer fit within your risk appetite? So technically speaking, any financial services in any country needs to be regulated within that country, right? So the cross-border business is a function of your risk appetites and generally potential backlash from the regulator if you're dealing with it. So you've already discounted the retail element from your discussion. So in Dubai under VARA, any promotion or activity also needs a license. So if you are promoting crypto or crypto derivatives on an MTF in the UK, for example, to UAE clients, be it institutional or counterparties, technically you still need a license. Now, would the regulator ever come after you, especially if you don't have a presence, and particularly considering that it's an online business, a Web3 business? Unlikely. Even if they want to enforce against you, they have to go through the process of enforcing locally in the courts, and then for the courts to then take it to the UK to be enforced there, which most regulators would probably shy away from, unless and until the size of the transaction or the nature of the transactions demands a policy action. The bigger risk that most firms take is a counterparty risk, where if the trades don't go well, and if you have operated without the relevant license, the counterparty can actually come after you and suggest that they have been sold a product, or they were induced to trade on a platform which was not licensed in the country. Therefore, the transaction does not have legal validity. Therefore, you have to give them their money back. So as long as you're dealing with large institutional clients who understand crypto or crypto derivatives, and by the way, the legal basis that I'm dealing with a professional client or an eligible counterparty is no defense in a court where you have done business without having the appropriate license. Sophistication question does not come into play. So this is where the risk appetite comes into play, and your controls and documentation will determine whether how much you protect yourself from that particular risk. So hopefully that's a roundabout way of answering that question, but that hopefully answers at least a part of it.
Ian, do you have anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, well, I would probably say speak to the professionals at J. Aaron and Partners, because this is right up your street in terms of the good work that you do. I know a little bit about this area, but I'm not a legal expert. However, what we see in the UK, and I'll speak about the current consultation in a moment, and equivalence and reverse solicitation. But we have this is complicated in the UK post-Brexit, especially if you're operating the activities under an MTF license, which is required for providing crypto derivative products and services. It seems very complicated to me post that, but I guess at some point that will be solved. And one of the big discussion points that Crypto UK had in responding to the consultation was around reverse solicitation, and there is suggested an exception. If a UK customer accessed a particular crypto asset service entirely at their own initiative from an overseas firm, and the firm does not otherwise solicit from such customers, this may not trigger FISMA authorization or UK financial services regulation. So it's just important to make sure that if I am selling my services, I'm licensed in one jurisdiction, I'm selling services in another jurisdiction, you get the proper advice, because it's not black and white. It depends on many factors.
Yeah, I agree. And look, it's Ian, your answer belies obviously a huge amount of work that you've done on that, because that tripped off an excellent answer tripped off your tongue in what seemed like an effortless way. But I think there is, I think, as industry participants, we know that there is genuine reverse solicitation, and then there's the salesperson flies out, has a conversation, says, I can't tell you about this, but if you send me an email on Tuesday, I'll respond to you. And in particular, dealing in cross-border, where, as Jahazib was saying, there is potential risk, even in the event that a trade doesn't go well, there is often significantly more downside than upside. So firms, I think, just need to be careful. And Ian, thank you for the small plug for our services. That's most welcome. So I hope that's answered the anonymous attendee question about MTFs. But again, if you want to really get into the weeds, we'd be more than delighted to do that. We've got another question, which is on the demand side, which is, how do you see the demand side? Are investors looking for solutions to add crypto to their portfolios? And are they already investing? So Jahazib, I'll hand that one to you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, it's a straightforward answer. There is significant demand in the region. I think if you can look at the flows, the Middle East, particularly the UAE and Saudi, will form a significant part of the crypto flow, something that people should pay attention to. There are institutional investors, very, very large, who are looking to who are actually in this space, and some of them are looking to get into this space either as a business or as an investor or both. And we're working with a number of very large government-related entities in the region to help them execute on what I've just mentioned. So yes, absolutely, there's tremendous demand here. There is a tremendous ecosystem in terms of different stakeholders and investors, and you will see a significant number of interesting business models that are coming out for serving the local market, the regional market, and the global market.
Very good. Now, look, I know that there's, I'm sure there are many more questions that attendees and participants have, but I'm conscious of time. So, in the spirit of good moderation, I would like to say thank you very much to all the hard work that's been done by Sue and Natalie in the background at Crypto UK. It's been fantastic working with them as a team, and Ian with you. It's been great working with our friends at MIACBA, and we hope to make this the first in a series of wider webinars which we hold with Crypto UK. We're very excited about the opportunity to present everyone and to share our knowledge. It's been really wonderful to participate, and I'd like to thank the attendees for the Q&A, and also invite anyone who's got any further questions to either come back to us through the invitation or through Crypto UK. We're very happy to work with the trade bodies. So I will just hand over for any final thoughts and words from Ian and Jahanzebine, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you ever so much for the invitation. It was a pleasure, really interesting discussion. I myself learned a lot from the call, and in fact, I was getting rather jealous, and I was going to ask if you wanted to give me a job so I could take one of these new visas and live in UAE, because everyone I asked that says they live there, they really enjoy it. So, you know, there we go.
But fantastic, Ian. Thank you very much. Well, you're more than welcome to come visit us, live here. We can arrange everything that you need. So, but who will take care of Crypto UK then? You have to think about that. And again, I want to thank remote organization. There we go. Exactly. But thank you very much, David, for moderating. Ian, thank you very much for your participation, and I also want to thank all the attendees. Thank you very much for the questions. Please do reach out if you have any further questions. As David said, this is first of many. And if there are any topics that you would want us to cover, please do share those with us. We'll be more than happy to make sure that we plug them into our next webinar. So thank you very much again.
Very good. Thank you very much, everyone. And we will wrap up and look forward to speaking again soon. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.